Hey, deserving listeners, it's time for me to react to your comments from my videos from last week. Let's get to it. Darcy Bears All reaction that I did last week. Bethany says, the fact that Tom sees himself as a womanizer gives me secondhand embarrassment. Yeah. Listener Lee from Ireland says, Jesse's parents having made another appearance last week, it got me to thinking about Jesse as a child while I was washing the dishes. In the 80s and 90s in Europe, especially in Western Europe, there were movements of the New Age hippie travelers and ravers who lived a nomadic lifestyle, were hedonistic, and often, if not always, had their children on the road with them. This exposed the children to a lot of drug use, alcoholism, instability, and abuse. Now, I know it is important not to judge a book by its cover, but the parents very much resemble those who would have led this lifestyle. Jesse has alluded to alcoholism in his childhood, but mentions very little more, as I feel it could be a profound source of shame and or trauma for him. If he had grown up in a hedonistic adult indulgent situation, this would explain his obsession with control, having had no stability as a child, his abhorrence of intoxication, and his desire at all times to appear respectable, neat, and of a certain class. End of email. Listener Lee actually went to the website, Psychology in Seattle, clicked on the contact button, emailed me directly from there. Yeah, Lee, interesting. I did not know that. I mean, I could imagine that being true, but I didn't know that especially in Western Europe, 80s and 90s, there were movements of like hippie travelers, nomadic lifestyle, hedonistic. Yeah, and if that were the case for Jesse, we could imagine that depending, that could create some issues. I mean, it's a very worthy hypothesis that I wouldn't have known about if someone hadn't pointed that out. But yeah, I mean, it certainly would explain. I don't know if you can see the dog there. He's wearing a Psychology in Seattle hoodie. I don't know if you saw that. It says, take care of yourself because you deserve it. Corey and Evelyn. But anyway, listener Lee, very interesting. So to think about, so let's just hypothesize, you have Jesse, he's, who knows if this is true, but growing up with parents who were very hedonistic, very, against authority, maybe a lot of drug use. Sometimes that often can happen in communities like that. Maybe some good moments, maybe some bad moments, some neglect, some chaos, obviously observing a lot of intoxication, a lot of the bad things that come from that. And yeah, I mean, it certainly would explain, if that were true, which we're just kind of shooting in the dark there, it would be a huge factor in the way that he presents, absolutely. And maybe even who he's attracted to. But, I don't know. Corey and Evelyn video. Up-tier patron Sahana from Vancouver, BC, she emailed in. I was watching your reaction video on Corey and Evelyn the other day and realized that Evelyn's other logic on breaking up as a form of communicating the direness of my requests with my partner. I don't do it anymore. So Sahana is talking about how it seems like Evelyn might be communicating her needs through a dysfunctional breaking up process. I don't know if that's the case for Evelyn, but there are people that do that, and Sahana is up-tier patron. Sahana is relating to that. I don't do it anymore, but I used to be convinced that the only way to get things past a hiccup was to create distance, have an all-or-nothing demand, and just end things with my partner. I would feel hurt and extremely angry with myself and my partner, but slightly relieved with the space and the finality of breaking up. Of course, I always wanted back into the relationship and wanted the love that they would and wanted the love, and they would help me walk through that mess and back to a happier place in the relationship. I do slightly understand why acting on that is not okay, more so intellectually than actually feeling it. I'm working with my therapist and my general practitioner on exploring possible borderline personality disorder diagnosis to add to the list of OCD, PTSD, derealization, generalized anxiety disorder, and depression. End of email. Yeah, so the thing that you're pointing out here is that for people that have the kinds of relational traumas and the kinds of schemas and defenses that result in breaking up as a dysfunctional urge to communicate something. If you want to break up with someone, then, obviously break up with someone. But when you look at people, I believe Corey and Evelyn have said this, that Evelyn has broken up with him like 8 times. And we don't know. We would have to talk with Evelyn, but that's a red flag for someone that uses breaking up as a tool. Now, if we just phrase it that way, it sounds manipulative. It sounds psychopathic even. But as Sahana is pointing out, it's this strong urge, and I'm glad that you're pointing this out, Sahana. When you have relational traumas and you have them poked at by your partner, a small hurt becomes a gigantic hurt. And then a small amount of anger becomes gigantic anger. And a small amount of the desire to kind of push away from your partner for a little bit becomes a giant pushing apart and of breaking up. But it's all kind of mixed up in there. There's a lot of, cross, feelings and thoughts, some of which are, let's break up. This is it. I can't stand this person. I can't believe they did that to me. Another part is, well, I don't want to lose this person. So what do I do here? It can be overwhelming, and it feels right to the person. When we look at it from the outside, it's like, well, why would you do that? Why would you communicate your needs through breaking up with someone? That doesn't make any sense. It's not fair. It's not functional. There are other ways to communicate your needs, right? Well, when you have relational traumas of certain significance, you don't think logically about things. You're just overwhelmed with feelings, and you just do things out of desperation, including breaking up. There's all sorts of things: substance abuse, sexual acts that you're not really interested in doing, but you're using as a distraction, overspending, violence. There's all sorts of things that people engage in out of desperation, and so Sahana is pointing that out. They're saying, I do slightly understand why acting on it is not okay. And that's part of that transition. As you start to emerge out of that reactivity, you intellectually, and I've worked with a lot of clients on this, is the first step is to intellectually try to convince yourself that this isn't helpful to me. It very much feels like it's the right thing to do, but I need to differentiate there and say, like, well, wait, are my feelings accurate this time? And that can be very hard. And for Sahana, they're saying, I do kind of get intellectually, I'm differentiating my thoughts and my feelings and going, okay, I think I see this urge as not being necessarily okay. The way that I would put it is that it doesn't serve you. To break up with someone is often, especially if you're doing it repeatedly, it comes from a place of, I would like to communicate how much you hurt me. I would like you to take care of my relational traumas. I would like you to know how much I need you and how devastating it is to me when you hurt my feelings. I would like you to take care of me. I would like you to just hold me. I would like you to prove that you are dedicated to me and that you care about me. I would like you to talk to me. I would like you to be with me. Those are valid communications. And, if that's what's going on, deserves a voice. Breaking up with someone to communicate that doesn't communicate that. Now, for a lot of the Coreys of the world, over time, they will learn that. They will say, oh, the breaking up isn't real. It's this other thing. And I think Corey might be in that category. I'm not quite sure. Good old Jules says, Evelyn calling Jenny that thing is totally uncalled for. It's disgusting to hear that. Yeah, Evelyn has a lot of fairly disturbing language around Jenny that, if I understand the situation right, doesn't make a lot of sense, right? She broke up with Corey. Corey left the country. They thought they would never see each other again. He met a woman and dated her for a short amount of time and then broke up, and then he came back, and now they're back together. To call her, that thing, among other kinds of names, is, it's unfair. Daisy says, I dated someone like her that made me fight and fight and fight until we got back together. That's what he wanted. It was exhausting. When it actually ended, I was extremely confused because I just thought it was just another fake breakup. So I kept trying until I just understood it was for real. It was very tough. I just never wanted to let go before the time because he would take it as a lack of love and then accuse me of not loving them if I didn't fight. Right. So that's another aspect to it, is that for people that use this as a tool, again, mostly unconsciously or out of desperation, if you want, if you're sitting there going, okay, they're breaking up with me, but I don't want this relationship to end, my only recourse is to fight for the relationship the way Corey is doing. It just unrelenting accommodation, and it's all my fault, and it's never your fault, and yes, I'm so sorry, and just the way Corey is doing it, because that anything short of that is a sign to the Evelyns of the world that the Coreys of the world don't really love you. And this cycle of testing, of I need to test my partner to make sure that they love me, and kind of control as well. People will sometimes denigrate people that want control. We all want control. Control is a very nice thing to have, to be able to say, I want you to love me right now. I want you to listen to me right now. I want you to pay attention to me right now. I didn't see my dog. It's looking out the window. We all want that, and that's functional. It's fine. We want the ability to ask for things and for people to give those things to us. It's just when it's unfair and when it's unbalanced, and it kind of looks that way in that relationship. Avery says, I think if they do get back together, Evelyn and Corey, he will have to play this role forever. The unworthy suitor with a bent knee, willing to do anything just to have a chance with her. Yeah, I mean, it certainly doesn't look like the pattern is relenting. Olivia says, thanks for mentioning that sometimes relationships aren't as simple as knowing it's right if you have relational traumas. I hate that phrase thrown about, when you know, as if relationships don't have to be worked on. Yeah. There's a lot of things we could say about how do you know you're in a good relationship? How do you know you're with the right person? Phrases like, well, you'll when you know, when it's right, it's right. When it works, it works. All those things are fine, and they're not wrong because they're pithy and simplistic, and could be applied to a lot of situations. But at the same time, relationships are always work, particularly past a certain phase. And when you're relationally traumatized, it can be extremely hard to determine, because one of the metrics that people will go off of when they're trying to say, is this relationship worth it or not, is like how much conflict is happening and how much distress is happening in the relationship because of the other person. And if you have a lot of relational traumas, then baseline, you're going to have a fair amount of distress and a fair amount of conflict. So is that conflict baseline, like as good as you're going to get given both of your relational traumas, or is it a bad match? I mean, it's a really hard thing to figure out for people, and there's no easy answer. It's just you just have to explore it and take a path. Isla says about the Corey and Evelyn video, as an Ecuadorian, I was really looking forward to the couple going to a therapist and seeing Dr. Honda's reaction. It is incredibly hard to find a good and qualified clinical psychologist in Ecuador, let alone a couples therapist, because of the norms and the regulations overseeing the profession are non-existent. There is not a particular certification needed to practice or an exam overseen by a governing body. Hence, I've met therapists who work on past life regressions, tarot card readings, numerology, and other forms of pseudoscience as the primary means of treating their clients. This means that it's on the patient to do extra research on the clinician, and even then it might not be a good fit. I imagine this is particularly hard on rural areas like where Corey and Evelyn live, so I was pleasantly surprised to see that they were in seemingly capable hands. Yeah, thank you. I always like to read about, the culture and the context, because it obviously provides a lot of help in terms of the conceptualization of what's happening. And what this person is saying is, as an Ecuadorian, it's hard to find a qualified therapist because it's not regulated. And in the United States, in Washington State, when I first became a therapist, it was the same here. Anyone basically could call themselves a therapist, a counselor. But there were movements to make the government require licensure based on a certain level of education, passing certain supervision requirements and licensing tests and that kind of thing. And now in Washington State, and I believe in all the states in the United States, in order to call yourself a mental health person, a therapist, a counselor, psychologist, psychiatrist, social worker, you have to actually present a qualifying set of qualifications and pass a test. Anyway, but in Ecuador, it's like it was in Washington when I first came up. And that makes it a lot harder as a consumer, as a client, to actually find the right person. So yeah, I thought that therapist was great. So it was nice to see. Courtney says, Dr. Honda, I just wanted to let you know that I know how happy getting likes on your videos makes you. So even though I often watch your episodes on my TV on the couch, I try to go back and like them on my PC as often as I can. I hope it makes your life a little bit better. Courtney, it does, 100%. Thank you for... I think it's great that people are thinking about my feelings. Because, I don't know, I think about your feelings. So it's mutual. But yeah, that's nice of you. It is a thing. And really, I think all YouTubers have that thing. And whether they admit it or not or something, you're not posting the video like nowhere. You're posting on something. You're like, does anyone going to like this? And, when people like it, it's like, oh, okay, thanks. And, every little vote counts. Anyway, Jenny and Summit. Mime says, things are getting bad when the astrologer is the most reasonable person on the show. Yeah. Liz says, the surprised Pikachu face that Dr. Honda had when the astrologer was a reasonable human was with solid advice after some of the other various divination people, tarot card readers, psychics, would have come on here talking 100% out of their butt. It was refreshing to hear someone say the real truth at his family. Yeah. Sophia says, Summit mentioning that he isn't working, at least not at the time. Summit mentioned that he isn't working, at least not at the time this filmed. Okay, I didn't know that. That must have passed by me. Jenny was a housekeeper before she retired, so no wonder she doesn't want to clean all the time. Yeah. They are living off of her Social Security that she earned from working her whole life, so Summit should be the one maintaining the house if the argument is about equal contribution. Interesting. I didn't know that. Thank you, Sophia, for pointing that. So Summit is not working, and Jenny is retired off of essentially her retirement. Social Security, you pay into it as you work, and then you get it back after you retire. And so she's the one bringing in the money, and he is not. Now, I think they both should just, in my values, and really just human values, the metric that I follow is there's a set of work that needs to be done, whether it's childcare or house care or errands or work outside the house. And there should be 50-50. That if someone is working 40 hours a week at work, then the other person should be doing 40 hours of work somewhere else, and Jenny and Summit, since neither one of them are working, they should be doing 50% of the housework. And my impression is that that's true. Now, when the parents arrive, they're trying to change that. But anyway, but I guess we don't know what's going on there because they don't really go into the details. Kaida says, Dr. Honda, I'm Indian, and since you asked if anyone opposes the patriarchy in India, the answer is yes. India's history of feminism is very rich. India is full of feminist movements in different places and women breaking the oppression. I say this because I don't want you to hesitate to call out the patriarchy here, deeming it to be the culture, because the culture is full of rebellious women too. While I understand that Jenny and Summit love each other, he has often expressed his needs of a wife to take care of him, which is oppressive to Jenny, so don't mind calling that out. You will not be politically incorrect. Thank you, actually, for that. Yeah, I have heard of I don't know much about Indian culture or history, but I have heard about movements over the decades, feminist movements. I remember hearing more recently about a movement to protect women from sexual assault in India, if I remember right, and that that sexual assault became so normalized and so rampant in some communities that women banded together. Anyway, so it's interesting to know, and I'd love to know more about it. And you're also saying, to me, don't be shy about calling out the patriarchy in India. Yes, it is a cultural element, but there are a lot of people in India who are fighting against the patriarchy, who are fighting against rape culture and toxic masculinity and unfair treatment of women and dehumanization of women, oppression of women. And so even though it is a cultural aspect in the same way as it is in the United States, you're not going to be politically incorrect. Aware Indians will, progressive aware Indians, fair Indians, I'll say, will agree that, with some of the calling out of the patriarchy. That's good to know. Because, I think I was saying this in the video. I'm like, am I wrong? And is it wrong for me? Because on one hand, I'm like, that's sexist and awful and unfair to treat anyone like that, but particularly like half the population as if they're servants of their husbands and the husband's family. Like, that's not okay. It's just not. And then on the other hand, I'm like, well, am I being culturally insensitive? Or am I not understanding the culture? Do I not understand like the broader picture? Like one of the things that some cultures have, including Indian culture, is they will have arranged marriages. And in my neck of the woods, that's like absurd. The idea that our parents would just pick who we marry for the rest of our lives is absurd. I mean, it's hard enough to find the right person. To just like let my parents take a guess and how, anyway. So that is, and if it was forced on me and my, peers, it would have been extremely upsetting to us. And I know it still can be around the world, obviously, and it's certainly used as a bludgeoning tool in a variety of ways, oftentimes disempowering women. But point is that in some cultures they will tell me, people will tell me, no, actually arranged marriage can be kind of nice for a variety of reasons if it fits within this broader cultural context, where you're not necessarily marrying the person that you're going to be soulmates with. You're marrying someone that fits with you in the community, that makes sense in the broader scheme of the extended family, and having your parents choose that person increases that likelihood. And you're kind of locked in, so you got to make it work, right? There's no option of divorce, so you just have to figure out a way to make it work. So there are some pros to that I can't really see because I don't live in a culture like that. Again, we could still point to arranged marriages as being a massive tool of the patriarchy, in particular, but also just a oppressive tool to young people, and a weird throwback to times when it was more necessary to do that kind of thing. But anyway, what you're saying is, I'm going to do it. I'm going to call it as I see it. When I watch Jenny and Summit videos and I see sexism, I'm going to use your license as a permission to do it. Ariella and Biniam. This is the video where there was the crowd of people, the hoes and stuff. Wait says, having a newborn is one of the most stressful experiences imaginable. And the stress of a new relationship, a new culture, a new country, and disagreement between religions and parenting styles, we're probably watching the worst, these people at their worst. I hope they can get through it. My husband and I had a newborn during the pandemic. We got pregnant right after we got married and had no help and no idea what we were doing. We fought every day over how to handle parenting in the pandemic. We made it through, and 2 years later, we're stronger than ever, and we're expecting our second baby. Congratulations, wait. I credit prayer, Zoloft, and therapy. Well, good for you that you sought therapy. Zoloft can help, and I suppose prayer can help as well. And yeah, absolutely. A lot of people will mention this of just like, well, Ariella is a new mother, a protective mother, 100%. And I think I say that in the videos. Like, I get it. She's protective of her child. Good. She and him are having some issues around parenting and values and religion. And okay, but I'm just really concerned about the way that they talk to each other and the way in which they resolve their issues, that it could escalate. I think when people watch shows like this, they often like insert themselves and they say like, yeah, I agree with that. And instead of what I do as a therapist is I'm trying to help them. I'm trying to like figure out, okay, given your preferences, which are, unless someone has a total wackadoo preference, like I want to throw babies off of a cliff, we wouldn't accommodate that. But it's like, I don't want to go into a crowd. I do want to go into the crowd. Both are fine. They're both okay. They're both right. They both have equal rights over doing that and with the child. So it's not who wins, it's how do they talk to each other? How do they prep each other? How do they understand each other? How do they communicate to each other? With Ariella, it's like, hey, I'm kind of anxious around crowds, but she has to kind of know that about herself. And that's it, so we're about to go into a crowd, so can we talk about this for a second? And for him, he needs to recognize that her signs of distress and say, oh, we need to pull back for a second, sort of recharge and think this effort of going into the crowd. And he could say, look, it's really important to me. This might look like a ridiculous thing to you, but this is everything to me. And I really need all of us to get that water on us. It's very important, talking and understanding and listening and expressing. They don't do that. That is not their style of communication, which concerns me greatly for a variety of reasons. If they didn't have a kid, it wouldn't concern me as much, but the fact that they have a kid, very, very much concerns me. But anyway, all right, y'all, that was fun. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.